What's up, Simonics, and welcome back to a new tutorial about using the latest version of Firebase and AngularFire in your Ionic project. So if you recently tried to use Firebase and you looked up a tutorial and you gave it a try, you most likely failed because a few months ago there was an update to AngularFire, which is now currently, or using in this video, version 7. And especially the Firebase JavaScript SDK changed to version 9. And there were quite a lot of changes. You can still use the old AngularFire packages, or you can just use all the old versions, but if you install it in a new application, you will usually get the latest versions, and that's what we want to do today. So AngularFire has improved, the JavaScript package has improved, it has a lot smaller size, we're only importing the elements that we need, and we're going to build a little application without authentication to work with Firestore collection data, so list data, add data, working with documents to update them and delete them, and have a real-time connection in all our places. So it's really a nice example. If you're getting started with Ionic and Firebase, this could be your first tutorial in setting up a great application in the future. Of course, if you later want to add something like authentication using storage to upload files, that's not yet covered. Let me know if you want to know more about this, or check out the Ionic Academy, my place to help you with everything Ionic. Of course, also including a fresh course on using all the cool things with the latest versions of Firebase. But for today, let's dive into our simple example and see how we can use the latest versions of AngularFire and Firebase with Ionic. Alright, so let's get started with our application. We're gonna start with a blank new Ionic application, and the only thing I did so far is adding a page for a modal that we want to display and a service that will hold all the logic to load the data from Firebase. Now we can continue, first of all, inside the Firebase console by adding a new project. So let's call this dev-dactic. Something like this, doesn't really matter. I usually disable this, we don't really need this, and that should take about a few seconds. In the meantime, we can check out AngularFire. For this video we are using AngularFire version 7, which has a tiny, well, actually quite a bit different way of adding and using functions than before. You can still use the old way, there's a compatibility package, but we want to use the latest way. So now, once your Firebase application is ready, you want to add it a web app, name doesn't really matter. The only thing that we want to have is the configuration, which should usually appear right in here. So we can copy this block here, all the information, and open the environment file in our Ionic application. We're going to put this under Firebase, and then we already got all the information to connect to our Firebase application in our app. Now, the next step is to use a schematic to add the AngularFire package and also a few other packages. I don't know exactly why, but for me, usually this fails the first time. So it has AngularFire 7, that's definitely one we want to have, so we go ahead with yes. This will not only install AngularFire, we can check out the package.json. So by now, Angular Ionic 6 might be a stable version once the video is out. And on top of AngularFire, of course, the standard Firebase JavaScript SDK will be installed. So now you should find AngularFire version 7, something like this. You should find Firebase version 9 and above, and RxFire also added. Again, usually this has failed for me, I was actually fine after running it the first time because all the packages are installed, or you can just run it again, but I don't think it will actually change a lot. We can leave this open since we know all the packages are being installed, and we can head over to our app module to initialize the connection to Firebase. So I'm going to close this for now. What we need is, first of all, the environment. So that's where we stored our information. Please use this one. Well, I don't really like the pad like this. Won't make a difference. Now what we need as well is the provide. Can I use this? Provide Firebase. Of course, no automatic import, and initialize app from the main package of AngularFire app, and AngularFire/app. And what's wrong with that? Has no provide, yeah, Firebase app, and most likely have a spelling issue. Yeah, okay, you want to have it like this. So now we can create the connection by adding them to our imports, and it looks now a bit different than it did before. We're now using this function, and to the function we pass another factory function, which is the initialize app, to which we finally submit the configuration we added. This is now the new syntax with AngularFire version 7. And it looks mostly the same for everything else that you want to do. For example, for get Firestore, so to use the Firestore database, we have to import get Firestore, and we pass in a function which is provide Firestore. That means we could. What's wrong with you? Did I do anything wrong? Provide. What's did I miss some brackets anywhere? Value and is not a reference value. What exactly are you talking about? I really don't see what I did wrong with that line. Can you tell me? Provide Firestore. Oh, okay, get Firestore. Okay, anyway. And as well, if you would now add authentication, storage, messaging, anything else, you would import them from the according AngularFire package. So Firestore, we would have authentication, storage, and the import will look like this. You could also make this a function and return this, would basically be the same. You could then also provide more information like enable offline mode for Firebase or anything like this. So this is the new way to do things. Now we can also see on the command line it failed. I really don't know why. I'm just gonna go ahead with Ionic Surf and hope that everything works. I really think because the packages are installed, I don't know what could go wrong. Okay, let's build our application. It's a simple Node application, and we first of all have to apply a little change to our Firebase project. So let's open realtime database. No, let's open Firestore database. We don't want to use the old version, and select create database and start in test mode, because we don't want to use authentication. Otherwise, all the endpoints in the database would be secured. So we're going to start without authentication and using dummy testing rules, which basically allow access to everyone. So hopefully now we see an application. Yeah, that looks good. Looks good to me. Also here, it should set up the database. And while this is taking place, we can already focus on our service, because that's maybe the biggest change of AngularFire version 7. What we have to do is first of all inject a reference to Firestore in here. The reason is we're gonna have to use it with AngularFire and inject it into basically every call. So let's start with something like get nodes. We want to get a simple collection. What we start with is creating a reference to that collection, and you will notice that we're using a lot of these functions now. And that's a way to basically directly use the Firebase JavaScript SDK through AngularFire. There was a change with the latest version. And then you inject the reference. So you can see from the signature, we have to use the Firestore instance and then a path to our collection. Let's say our collection is named nodes. We haven't given it any name. We don't have any data in here. That will be created. That's not a problem. And once we got the reference to the collection, we can return the collection data. And again, you see it's a function, but actually that function should be added to Firebase Where's actually the right place for the collection data? There. That's the right place for the function. And once again, simply check out the signatures. So we have our query and we have options. For the query, we just need to add our reference, and that basically already makes the function happy. Now, well, let's directly put this to use. Let's go to our homepage and inject our data service. And right within the constructor, we can do this. Let's do it. This.data service get nodes, and it returns an observable, as we can see. So let's handle this and let's log out the response. We're updating, and usually we shouldn't get any nodes because the collection is empty. We could do this now by ourselves, so let's just do this for now. Field title, test, and text. So let's manually add a node so we see some kind of data, and we already see we have a live connection because we got that new data right in here. That's a very good sign if that happens for you, because that means everything is connected correctly. You've used the right environment, you've initialized the app correctly. And what we want as well, most of the time, is to have the ID of an object or of a document included. And in the past, that looked kind of strange. You had a huge block. So this has become a lot easier lately. For the options, you can just say, please include the ID field with a name. Let's just use my name for testing. And then we will see that in our result, the my name property is filled with the ID, which we can also find in here in the collection. That's pretty cool. Of course, I recommend to use something like ID instead. But then you get a nice list of your objects, of your collection data with the right information. Great. On top of that, we might need a few more functions. So I'm gonna just, well, do we want to do this? Let's just bring them in. Also for this one, I created a little interface just so we have some types in here. And we can also use something like observable node array in here. If it complains, well, let it complain and just say this result isn't observable of nodes. Now let's go through all the other functions. This is just giving us the whole collection as an array. If you want to access one specific document, you can go ahead and use the doc function. Just like we used collection to create a reference, we can use doc to create a reference to one specific document. Again, passing in the instance of the Firestore database and then the path to that one document. And again, just like we've used collection data here to get an observable of the real-time data, we can now use document data to get that same information just for one element. Now, all the rest of the CRUD functionality is pretty easy. Adding a node is simply accessing our nodes collection just like we did before, and then using add.doc. Really, the only thing you have to use or learn with AngularFire version 7 is the name for these. But this is just like maybe 7 or 8 functions that you should know about. Couldn't I add collection in here? Just asking, yeah. So you should really import everything just from AngularFire Firestore to be sure that everything works. If we want to add a node, we also need a function to delete a node. Once again, create the reference and then call the according function to delete something. And let's do the last one, update. Guess what this update be? I think we've already used basically all of the most important functions that you're gonna need. So again, reference, and then the function passing in the reference and then the actual data. For using authentication, this mostly works the same. We have a course on this in the Ionic Academy, which uses all the new stuff, storage, authentication, everything else. But really, it's just about knowing the name or finding out the right names for a function and then checking out the signature, which usually displays the usage pretty well. Okay, we're done with the data service, so let's head over to our homepage. As we can see, we will get an array of nodes, so I think we can actually directly head over to our homepage and remove a bit of this and that. And then we can shape our view. I'm gonna make the header like this and put in an Ion list with Ion items ng4 let, I don't know, node of nodes. On click, we also want to open a node. We could also use a router link, but I wanted to show you something cool with Ionic 6, so that's why we use a function today. We haven't defined nodes yet, not a problem. Let's make this an empty array and then set our nodes to the response in here. And all the nodes just have a title and text later on. So let's just for now only display the title in here and perhaps create that function because it will make the IDE very happy. Okay, we should now see one element in here, and we actually do, which kind of confuses me because in my previous tests I had to use a manual change detection. Maybe we're gonna see something about this as well coming up later. If not, I will anyway tell you about it, just in case you encounter that problem. Now, of course, we also want to add a node and update the node and delete the node. So for adding a node, let's just come up with a quick Ion fab on top of our page here. And within add node, we will use the, well, maybe easiest way to create a node by using the Ionic alert controller. Because you can define inputs, and that's gonna make our life really easy at this point. Just go ahead and create the alert. We're gonna make this async and then await this dot alert controller create. We're gonna define the header and the inputs first. So little header. For the inputs, one variable will be named title, the other one will be named text. That's basically the content that we want to store within our Firestore database. Then we have two buttons. Let's make this one a cancel button using the role cancel. So it can close the modal again, the alert. And then we get text add and a little handler. If we click on that button, we want to trigger the function from our service that we defined up front. So since we've defined them all pretty nicely, we just now need to create a node interface. So let's just use result title, and for the text, so we can access those properties. They are here based on the names we've given to the input fields. Okay, we don't need any other real logic since this will automatically be triggered once we add something to our collection. We just need to make sure that we present the alert, which I usually tend to forget about. So there we go. And then let's give this a try. We should be able to add data to our Firestore database. Test 1, 2, 3, whatever. Yeah, maybe I should give this a different name. Okay, there we go. We see the update coming in. We see the data is added to our Cloud Firestore database, and that's usually when you're getting started with Ionic or Firebase already a pretty good feeling if you can add something. I still remember when I used Firebase for the first time, this really felt so powerful, like I can do everything now. And yeah, we kind of can do everything now. But we also want to open a node for two reasons. I want to show you something cool with Ionic 6, and I want to use one document directly with the update and delete function. So let's add the modal controller in here as well. Modal controller from Ionic Angular. And then let's create a new modal with breakpoints because I really love that UI. It might make more sense to just pass the ID to another page, but well, everyone could do that. Let's use a modal page instead. We want to pass the ID for the component properties. So you see, I could now just easily pass in the node and it would have the full information, but usually you maybe don't have all the information or you're using a router, so you only put the ID into the URL. Therefore, we're going to do it like this. id node.id, and then we will be able to extract that in our modal page. Now let's use those breakpoints. I really wanted to use them for a long time in a tutorial, and I finally feel comfortable about using them. These breakpoints basically define how our bottom sheet modal, because this is triggering a bottom sheet modal, is displayed. No, this is no array. So with the breakpoints, you define at which positions between 0 and 1 this modal sheet snaps, and the initial breakpoint is to which initial point the modal opens. Now let's do this, modal present, and then we should see our nice little modal coming up from the bottom, hopefully. There we go. And you see, this is the initial breakpoint 0.5, which means I can put it a bit more to the top. I could make it snap here again, or I can fade it out. Really, I love that new modal. Really could play around with that all the time. Okay, that was the first cool thing. Now let's head over to the modal something page. Right. Since we're passing the ID here in the properties, the easiest way of accessing it is simply defining an Angular input on that page with the name of the variable that we used. At the same time, we of course need our data service to retrieve a bit more data. And we might also need the modal controller to manually dismiss the modal once we delete one of our nodes. Now, within here, we can call the data service and get one of our nodes by ID. And we're going to subscribe again. And I think, let's quickly check this out. Yeah, we're including the ID field as well. So we can just use our node in here. We can also use the interface if we're cool and call this.node equals this. So that should load all the node data. Let me quickly bring up the template because that's going to be pretty boring. So no build with Ionic today. This is really like basic Ionic stuff. If we have a node, just make sure if you're using ng models and you're loading the data later, those fields will be undefined or null in the beginning. But then we can use node.title and node text as the ng model for our two inputs. And then I added two buttons to update a node and to delete a node. And those functions now will be, well, quite easy given the fact that we've already done all of the hard work in our service up front. So that really pays off. So for update node, we can use the data service update node. I really love to have a clear interface like that. Okay, this node, I think like, well, maybe we could show a little toast if we want to, just for fun. Let's do this. So when we update the node, we will just present a little toast afterwards to display the user that something at least has changed. Maybe just 1 second. And to delete a node, we can now call the data service delete node, passing in our node. The service will take care of the rest. This actually returns a promise, so we can just await it. No observable in this spot. And after deleting it, it's a good idea to close the modal because otherwise the page would be basically empty if we delete it. Now let's do this maybe side by side. We can maybe make this even a bit smaller now. Okay, so let's do this. My cool node test text. Then we're gonna edit. We're gonna see the item is added within Firebase. We can open the node and we see the details. We can use this cool thing to make it bigger. So let's also update the title and press update. And we even see in the background, the data is updated in the background since the observable is subscribed and we get the new data from Firebase. And that's also why I wanted to use this sheet so we can see this at the same time. Also for the content in here, we can now update this. If we close it, check out something else and then come back, all the data is still in here because there is the data. What would happen if I update the data in here from here? Okay, yeah. Because we're using a connection to the document, we even immediately get the update here in our ng model from the other side. So we're not just allowed to update from here, we also directly get the update from Firebase. So if I would clear this and update it, we would see that the node immediately has changed in here as well. Pretty cool, right? Two-way data binding with Firebase right here in action. Now, finally, delete. And everything of our hard work is gone once again. And we can close this. And with that, we have built a super easy application without authentication for now, but we're able to add to a collection, read a document, update a document, delete a document. The only thing that's missing right now would be setting a document, which is kind of like update, but completely overriding the whole document in Firebase. But otherwise, that's everything you need to get started with AngularFire version 7 in combination with the Firebase JavaScript SDK version 9. Alright, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this quick little update on using the latest versions of AngularFire and Firebase in combination with Ionic. I feel like it is a bit more challenging to figure out these function names like collection, collection data, collection group, doc data, because before we just injected some service and then we saw all the functions that we could use, and now we might have to look into the package or the documentation for the Firebase JavaScript SDK to figure out the right functions that we want to use. But otherwise, I think it's a more secure way for the future, since AngularFire needs less maintenance by just routing these functions to the JavaScript SDK. It will become a lot easier for them to maintain, and I'm sure we in the end all gonna benefit from this. Again, if you want to check out more about Firebase, check out the Ionic Academy, which has more courses on cool use cases in combination with Firebase, also including file upload, authentication, security rules, everything that you need. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video, so give it a like, hit subscribe, and I will catch you next week like always. So happy coding, Simon.